Hello everyone, welcome to this Q&A session brought to you by Packt Publishing. I'm Neha Pandey, a relationship lead from Development Vertical, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleague Anamita Velgekar, a growth lead from the similar domain. We are really happy to bring this session to the growing Godot community, especially at a time when Godot has firmly made its place as one of the most loved there. It's exciting to see just how much this ecosystem is evolving. And journey, we are proud to have a book that speaks directly to beginners, a book designed to give you a solid foundation to build 2D, 3D games. Yeah, that's right. We are talking about Godot for beginners. Today's session is all about exploring that journey, and we have two amazing people with us to guide this conversation. Robert Henning and Henrique Campos, both of whom have been instrumental in shaping and actively contributing to the wider Godot learning space as well. Over to you, Namita.
Thank you so much, Neha. And hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome from my side as well. I'm Namita Valgekar, Growth Lead at Packt, and it's honestly such a pleasure to be with you here. We are incredibly excited about today's session, not just because it's about making your first game with Godot, but because it's diving into a tool that's rapidly becoming a favorite in the dev community. Whether you are a complete beginner or switching over from one game engine like Unity or Unreal Engine, there's so much that you can unlock with Godot 4, and we are here to just discuss about that.
Exactly. That's why today's session is so valuable. We will be hearing directly from those who have worked deeply with Godot, sharing insights you won't find in typical tutorials or elsewhere. Like we are joined by Robert Henning, the author of Godot 4 for Beginner book. You might already know him from his YouTube channel, Game Dev Journey, where he shares tutorials that have helped so many people get started with Godot, and he has brought the same kind of energy and clarity into his book as well. We are really excited to have him here today. And alongside him, we have Henrique Campos, who has reviewed this book from technical lens. Henrique has been part of Pack family for a while now. We have worked with him on a couple of great Godot books already, and his Ludonata YouTube channel is another go-to, a learning resource for anyone diving deeper into Godot. So, Robert and Henrique, welcome to this session. It's such a pleasure to have both of you with us today. Yeah, over to you.
Great. Just to kick things off, first question to you, Robert. We actually watched the video you shared where you talked about your background and what led you to teaching Godot. It was really insightful. Would love for you to share the journey with everyone here too. And could you start by telling us, our viewers, a bit about yourself and what inspired you to write this book?
Thanks very much, Namita. Yeah, so I've always been interested in game development, not having had any formal training in game development, but rather in programming and business logic and that sort of thing. And I was always looking for a tool, that would be user friendly and beginner friendly. And I went through a couple of game engines, and I came across Godot, and it's just um, one of those programs where the workflow just clicks, and just really makes so much sense. Um, and so I thought, well, there's not a lot of resources online for learning Godot besides the manual, which is kind of very technical. And so I wanted to make something that was approachable for newcomers to the engine and show how you could make games in a fun way and make the learning fun. So that was really my approach with the book. And really, it's the book that I wanted to have when I was starting. So I hope that people enjoy it that way.
Uh, Now let's talk about your book, Robert. If you had to describe Godot for game development for beginners in a few sentences, how would you pitch it to someone who's opening Godot for the first time?
Um, I would describe it as Lego for game development.
Oh.
I think that's a good way to put it. Um, because you can build the blocks you need for the game that you're making. So if you've ever built Lego and looked at all the pieces that all spread out in front of you, the possibilities are endless for what you could build by plugging the right pieces together. And I think Godot is you can take a similar mental model for Godot.
Oh, that's really nice. I really love the analogy between Godot and Lego, and hoping that this book will be a manual to put all the pieces together to get the final result. Moving forward, I understand now, coming to you, Enrique, and it's amazing. Like, we have all been reading all these different books and how you constantly pause and read the why behind all the different concepts. It makes a big difference for all the self-taught developers. Now, Henrique, as someone who has been deeply involved in Godot ecosystem and also served as a technical reviewer for this book, I'd love to get your perspective. What is your view, and what makes Godot for beginners a meaningful resource for someone who's just stepping into this new engine?
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Congratulations, Robert, for this book. This is an amazing book, an amazing learning resource. I made a review video about it, and it's just incredible the way Robert explains things, taking into account the perspective of someone who is actually getting started. This is an ability that I personally don't have. Is very. This is something that I point out in this video. Is very valuable, being able to get into someone's shoes and understand how would be the learning journey of this person. And Robert did this very, very well. So the book guides everything from the beginning, from just like getting Godot into your computer, like downloading the engine, understanding the whole editor. But for me, the most valuable approach, the most valuable content that Robert puts into this book is taking into account the afterwards. So after you finish creating your first prototype with Godot engine, now that you understand, and Robert guides the reader through the journey of understanding how Godot will work, he also offers some paths to follow through after reading the book. And for me, this is the most valuable thing, because most people read a book and they just put a check, done reading, read, and it's just that they don't keep on with the journey. And Robert makes sure that they will keep the wheel spinning after reading the book. And I think that this is the most valuable thing, because it took into account the needs of the person who is actually grabbing this book for the first time, who is actually getting started into game development. So it's a very empathetic approach to teaching, and to me, this is the most valuable thing in this book.
Amazing. I totally agree with you, Henrique. The overall approach, it is the overall approach, and the focus has been always beginner for this book. And in terms of, shaping the book and shaping the content in a step-by-step manner, Robert has done amazing job, especially in terms of, once the book is published, we got amazing reviews on Pack Direct, Amazon. Then personally, Robert received so many messages and emails from the people as well who has read the book, and they really find it really useful, helpful. So, yeah, what I love about how this all fits together is that the book gives readers a solid and structured introduction to Godot, which makes it so much easier to later explore kind of a deeper topics as well that Henrique you have covered in your book, like multi-layer game development or game design patterns. So it's almost like this book sets the stage for everything that comes next. Yeah.
So Robert, we have the first technical question of today's interview. Uh, one of Godot's biggest strength is its scene system and node hierarchy. In your book, you break down it from a very beginner friendly way or beginner friendly perspective. Could you talk us through how you would recommend structuring a simple 2D or a 3D game in Godot, and why this modular approach is so powerful for newcomers or as compared to the other engines?
Yeah, well, like I said before, I often describe it as Lego for game development because, in Godot, everything is built from small, specialized nodes. So a sprite 2D, a rigid body 2D, a camera 3D, a collision shape, even user interface elements, they're all nodes. And a scene is simply a collection of these nodes arranged to represent something meaningful, like a player or an enemy, or it could even be the whole level. So for beginners, this is incredibly intuitive because, you're encouraged to think in terms of modular, reusable pieces rather than one giant script that's trying to control everything in your game. So if we compare this to another game engine, say Unity, beginners, they often get overwhelmed early on because they're dropped straight into, this world of game objects and long lists of components. And that system is very powerful, but, complexity, it isn't always beginner friendly. So Godot simplifies all that, and the learning curve is less steep because every behavior is a node and every object is a scene. So in the book, I recommend structuring a simple 2D or 3D game by breaking everything down into its own scene. So you've got a player scene, maybe an enemy scene, a collectible scene, and then a level scene. And then each of these scenes can be instanced into the game, just like those reusable Lego blocks. So when you update the player scene, every level that uses the player automatically benefits from that update. And, it's this modular approach. It not only keeps the project clean, but it teaches beginners good software architecture without them actually realizing it. And they learn about composition, inheritance, encapsulation, and the separation of concerns just by working with Godot's node system. And that's incredibly empowering for someone that's starting their game dev journey.
Whatever
So
the
I
follow up is basically whatever Robert has just mentioned, like his perspective, what he has given. Would you like to comment on it? What is your thoughts for it? For
okay.
what he has mentioned? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the approach that Godot takes into game development, as Robert said, is very modular. It's like you're actually assembling pieces towards your final game. And this is, as Robert said, very powerful because it teaches without the user actually realizing it some very powerful techniques for software architecture. So there is a theory where they say that someone can get into some layers of awareness, of consciousness about a given skill, and the best systems are the ones that provide the unaware that people are competent into a given system. And Godot does that. So Godot makes so that you will create a reliable library of nodes that you can reuse across project, even without you realizing that you are creating a modular base of code. I got some questions from a mentoree that I have on my mentorship, and he was asking, oh, he was making a combo system, and he was getting some weird optimizations issues. And I said, what's happening? And he said, oh, I think that the game manager is getting overwhelmed with data. And I said, why are you using a game manager? You don't need that. You're just handling some combos. You can create a component for handling combos. You don't need to have the game, a monolithic game entity handling everything. This is why you have those bottlenecks. And then we created this component, and he's reusing it. And even myself, I'm getting into the stream point of creating some very specific responsibilities. Like I have a node that is responsible for counting. So it's basically a for loop that emits a signal on every iteration, because this allows me to turn something that is made for just one iteration, and I can reuse it. I can recall this method many times if I need to. So I can combine these two components if I need to. So for instance, I have a spawner, and if I combine it with a counter, I can basically create many instances of the spawner scene. So Godot guides you through this learning journey where you are going to get competent into software architecture without realizing that you are getting competent on that. So is, as Robert said, is very intuitive, is powerful. It helps beginners understand. So for instance, I didn't have any software background. I just get into game design and I use Godot and I learned how to create good architectures with Godot engine. So it's a very powerful tool.
Amazing. It's great to know that we have two authors. Well, like Robert said, he wanted to have a book like that one he created. That when he started to create the book, and then you also created your book. That I remember you saying that whenever I wanted, like you mentioned, your mentee was having some issue with a bottleneck issue with the game manager. So you solved it by doing a more simplified version of going ahead with things. Sometimes the most difficult problems have the simplest solutions that we keep saying to ourselves. Yes.
Thank you so much. I guess that's a clear way to put it, both of you. Thank you so much. I really like how you even highlighted the idea of keeping, the overall focus small and focus like over first scenes. That's exactly the kind of mindset that gives beginners confidence and prevents the usual everything is in a one script rather than one larger script problem. The way you explain it in the book feels very quite natural, Robert. So, moving on to the next technical question, another concept that you explain really well is Godot signal system. For many beginners or developers coming from other game engines, this can feel like a new way of thinking. Could you share how signals fit into a scripting workflow and why they make game logic cleaner and more flexible, Robert? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So in the book, I describe signals as a safe built-in messaging system that it lets nodes talk to each other without hard wiring everything together. So many developers, they might come from Unity and they might be used to this classic pattern of having one script directly call another script. So say when the player touches this thing, call that function on that object. Now this works, but it creates a problem in it. It makes everything very tightly coupled. So if one thing changes, then everything else breaks. So Godot's signal system encourages a more flexible approach. So instead of saying, call my function directly, the node will simply say, well, I will emit this signal when something important happens. And anything else in the scene can listen out for that signal and respond in the way that it needs to. So, for example, your player scene, it might emit a health change signal. So the user interface is listening and it updates the health bar. Enemies might listen and then they might react. They might get aggressive, more aggressive, or something like that. The audio system could play a sound effect at that point. The player, the key is the player itself doesn't need to know any of those other systems. It can just stay clean and self-contained. So signals really fit quite beautifully into Godot's scripting workflow because they boost clarity, basically. Your player code controls just the player. Your user interface code controls just the user interface. So this results in projects that scale better, they're less breakable, and basically for beginners, they're much easier to understand. Um, you know, Watching new developers realize, oh, I don't need to drag or references everywhere or write, those giant controller scripts like Henrique was talking about. That's one of the best parts of teaching Godot because signals, they can help them think more modularly, which is exactly the mindset that professional game developers use. And there's this, kind of mantra for Godot, it's called call down, but signal up. So when we say call down, we mean that a parent node, like the main level, that they can reach down and they can tell all the children what to do. But for signaling up, the child node, like say a collectible in the level, it should never look for the parent. It should just emit a signal, like a radio broadcast saying I was collected. And then everything that's listening for it can do what they need to do with that. So this changes the workflow entirely. Basically, it means you can take that coin, you can move it to a different level or a completely different game, and it's not going to crash because it's not looking for a specific scoreboard. It just shouts out, I was collected, and then the game can decide what to do with that information. So it makes the game logic, much more flexible. It prevents the project from becoming this fragile house of cards. And ultimately, Godot doesn't just help beginners make games, it helps them build systems. And that's what Henrique goes into depth with in his book. But, by forcing you to think nodes and signals, it actually teaches you to be a better programmer. And it doesn't matter what engine.
That's amazing. I actually you explain it in a very simple term, Robert. That helps a lot. That helps a lot. And yeah, so Henrique, how do you usually structure signals in larger projects? Like, do you follow any personal conventions or patterns that beginners can adopt early to avoid any messy signal usage later? We would love to know your thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, so this last sentence from Robert says everything. It helps build systems instead of specific logics and features. So this is actually something that I'm making on my studio, because when you have a company, everything runs on systems, right? So you have to have like specific structures that you can follow up and you can combine them to create the tasks and produce what you want. And this is exactly how Godot allows you to do actually um, how can I say that it benefits the people who actually get into systems thinking. For instance, I have a system for aiming, I have a system for spawning, and I have a system for counting. I also have a system for random timing generation. So combining all these, I can create a weapon and I can create a top-down shooter. But since this is a 2D system, I can create not only a top-down shooter, but I can create a horizontal shooter as well. Everything just fits in when you think in this modular approach instead of getting into specific features, coding everything into not reusable classes where you can basically solve a specific problem, but you have to reinvent the wheel the next time you face this problem. This is what I did, for instance, with the class that I mentioned, that is basically a for loop with a signal emitting on every iteration. I don't want to implement a for loop every time that I want to count a given iteration, or every time I want to do a specific thing a given set of times. I can basically just reuse this class, and connecting this signal to the method that I want to call any given amount of times. I already have this ability to recall this method as many times as I want, and I don't have to mess with this class anymore. It's closed. This problem is solved for me. So this is something that I talk about in my book. When you implement a feature, this class should be closed for any modification. So you shouldn't work on it anymore. So if you implemented your player logic, the player is closed. You shouldn't open the class again, make your modifications, and run the risk of breaking everything that interacted with your player on your base code. As Robert said, it becomes kind of like a uh, castle of cards where you move one card to the left and everything breaks down. So you should close this class and say, okay, this feature is closed. I don't mess with it anymore. If a new problem arises from other phases of development, you create a new class to solve this issue. And this will become a new component that you can integrate in this system. So replying to your question about any specific approach to signals, I think of them just like Robert said about systems. You have some input. This class will process this data, and the output is usually a signal. So for instance, the input of this counter class that I have is how many times it should count. And the output is the iteration that is currently. So I can use this signal to do things in my games. And every class will do that in a game, because games are nothing but a bunch of systems working together to create an experience. And if you think about this way, where you have a class, a node that receives some data and outputs some other data process, this raw material, and will process it and output the desired outcome, you basically can create a library of code that you can become a factory of games, because your base code, your library, will not be specific to your current game. You can rely on, you can leverage this library afterwards to create as many games as you want, even improving the previous approach on every next iteration, so you can create basically your own engine, as per se.
Right. So yeah, I guess Henrique, you have explained it very well. I guess this is what the beginners exactly the right practical approach towards signals, that they have to treat it as a individual system and then combine it together to build something beautiful out of it. Yeah, that's totally right. It was super insightful. And again, coming back to Robert, uh, like all right, like we come towards the end of our session, and I have one final question for you, Robert, before we wrap up. What would you say to absolute beginners picking up Godot for the very first time, or developers transitioning from other game engines like Unity, Unreal Engine? Any practical mindset shift or habits, or tips you would recommend to help them feel more at home in Godot?
Um, well, the biggest mind shift to make is to treat each game object coming from other engines in isolation, rather than seeing them as this um, monolithic thing with a list of components. You make everything so that it can stand on its own 2 feet, and then you instance them, um, to make this chain, which becomes the completed level, or the completed component. But the biggest help is really just going to be either uh, buy Enrique's book or my book, depending on which level you feel that you're on, because they've been written to guide you through the transition, and they're purpose built to help you, um, you know, learn and develop your own thinking about it.
Yeah, that's definitely grounded advice, Robert, for the beginners. And I really appreciate how you have made this book feel like a soft landing for both new developers and experienced folks trying to something new, something different. And I love what you said about rhythm as well. It does have its own flow as well. And yeah, so thank you so much, Robert and Henrique, as well, for such an insightful discussion today. I am sure our audience has learned a lot, and I can't wait for them to dive into the details with your books. To everyone watching, remember, whether you are just stepping into game development or coming from engines like Unity or Unreal, this book gives you the foundation to truly understand how Godot works under the hood. It's not just about learning features, it's about thinking the Godot way, so you can build smarter, faster, and with more creative freedom. So dive in. Your journey with Godot starts here. Yeah.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much, Robert and Henrique. And for the audience who's listening to us today, we'd love for you to join a community on Discord, where Robert is actively chatting with readers and answering all your questions. You'll find the link in the comment section and for the book and in the books pages as well. And if you enjoyed today's session, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us for more such conversation. We also have a new game dev newsletter for the indie game developers, technical artists, and AAA professionals. So do subscribe to our brand new newsletter to get the best out of game development, news, tutorials, and expert insight. Whatever you say, we have done the survey and we are putting it up onto our newsletter. Link and the details in the description below.
Amazing. Thank you again, Robert and Enrique, for sharing your expertise. And to everyone who tuned in today, we are so glad you could join us. If today's conversation got you curious, we would love for you, we would love you to check out Godot for beginners book, and even Henrique's book. And if you do, we would be thrilled to hear about your thoughts, whether that's through a quick review on Amazon product page or sharing your feedback with us online or any social media. It helps others discover the book and means a lot to everyone who worked on it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most of all, have fun building with Godot.